Trump did not tweet or conduct a news conference. Instead, he gave Pam Bondi a confidential document behind closed doors. And what she discovered sent Schiff racing before the sun even rose. It was just past midnight, an hour when most people are sleeping and even the headlines are quiet. But in Palm Beach, the lights of Mar-a-Lago remained on. Pam Bondi arrived without an escort. No assistance, no security. Nobody else was supposed to know. She parked to the side, out of sight of the cameras stationed at the front entrance. She did not text. She did not call beforehand. The message had been plain. Come alone. Inside, the air was too still to be comfortable. The entry hall smelled pleasantly of new polish. Chandeliers above cast harsh shadows on the stone. Two guys waited silently toward the end of the corridor without saying anything. They just pointed left to a door that went underground. Bondi followed, her heels reverberating just once before she removed them and held them in hand. The chamber she entered did not equal the magnificence above. There is no gold leaf or fresh-cut flowers, just a large wooden table with 3 individuals already seated. Kash Patel, a former senior Pentagon advisor, Tom Ellison, a quiet legal genius who has worked on FISA reform privately, and Lena Drummond, a former intelligence officer turned silent whistleblower. Everyone looked at her, but no one smiled. Trump entered last. No announcement. No handshake. He did not sit. Instead, he brought a huge black briefcase and placed it on the table. It's everything in here, he said. No more summaries. No more filters. He flicked open the container and took out 2 folders. The first was hefty with more than 1.5 inches of unredacted documents, emails, handwritten notes, and meeting logs from the FBI, CIA, and other 3-letter agencies. The second was thinner but had a heavier meaning. A draft executive order that, if signed, would demand citizenship verification for all federal elections and deprive states of federal election money if they fail to comply. They lied, he replied, his voice lowering. They lied about everything. Crossfire Hurricane was never genuine. What about the dossier? Garbage. And Schiff? Schiff knew. He halted, gazing directly at Bondi. They believed it would remain buried. I want the lid off. Bondi opened the first folder, gently flicking through the pages. The dates matched what she had dreaded. October 2016, November 2017. Even as late as 2019, internal messages confirmed that the Steele dossier had not been vetted. Some emails also advised particular agents not to raise red flags because leadership values narrative consistency. I want this to be handled legally, Trump said. No speeches. There are no social media theatrics. Only firepower where it matters. You. Kash leaned forwards. We will be accused of politicizing intelligence. Trump did not flinch. We've already been accused of everything, so let's just speak the truth. Lena spoke for the first time, her voice low. If this becomes public, it will make Russiagate seem like playground politics. These memoranda indicate collaboration. This was not incompetence. It was theater. Bondi glanced up. Do you want me to go public with this? No, Trump said. I want you to go legal. You'll develop the case discreetly and painstakingly, and when the time comes, we'll go directly to Congress. Not the media. Not the press. The floor. She did not respond straight away. She glanced back through the notes. One in particular attracted her attention. An internal FBI memo dated October 28, 2016 said that none of the dossier's sources had been validated, but the Schiff team feels that timing is more important than accuracy. She laid the paper down. I'll do anything, but once we get started, there's no going back. Do you know that? Trump nodded once. That is why it's you. Outside, the wind increased up. There was silence within for 30 seconds. Bondi then grabbed for her heels, stood, and looked everyone in the eyes. Let us offer them something they cannot spin. However, Trump was unaware that this was more than simply a legal approach. It was a match hanging over gasoline. Bondi did not return to D.C. the following morning. Condo. She reserved a peaceful room at a modest inn along the highway in Jupiter, Florida. No press, no calls. Not even her usual security detail. She needed quiet and time. The files were strewn out on the bed. She sat cross-legged on the edge, her laptop unopened next to her. It wasn't about email chains or deadlines anymore. This was about intention, patterns, and language. People write stuff they don't imagine anybody will ever read. The first document, a communication between 2 FBI supervisors from mid-2016, identified the Steele dossier as unsubstantiated and stemmed from political opponents. It was followed by another internal email indicating that Christopher Steele was paid by Fusion GPS, a third-party contractor with direct links to the Clinton campaign. Bondi marked it. She maintained a running record of dates, names, and signatures. She was creating a path. Then came the sounds. It was hidden midway through a collection of digital records on a thumb drive that had been put inside the folder. She pressed play. Static crackled. Then a voice. Calm, practiced, and recognizable. Adam Schiff. We don't require comprehensive verification. All we need is speed. The visa must be ready by Monday. Bondi sat back. She replayed it. Then again. There was no denial or hesitancy in the voice. He was not perplexed. He was in charge of the production. She opened a yellow paper and began writing. A new column features remarks that contradict public testimony. Schiff spent 4 years informing the public that there was obvious proof of conspiracy. He'd stood in front of cameras on Capitol Hill declaring confidence. And now he was caught greenlighting a surveillance request based on unverified information. Kash Patel warned her. They'll label you foolish for even having these files, he warned, even if their names were on the page. She navigated to the Fusion GPS chain. We exchanged dozens of mails with key campaign personnel. One line stood out. Only a few weeks till the election. We're now pushing the information via a friendly intel channel. Should arrive by Friday. Bondi reread it twice. Friendly intelligence channel. Not a news outlet. This is not a Time opinion piece. Intelligence. They had converted political trash into surveillance fuel. It was worse than she expected. The more she went, the less the papers resembled bureaucratic muddle and more like a blueprint. Deliberate, organized, and practiced. At the bottom of the pile was a last folder called Operations Back Channel. Within a single transcript, an intercepted exchange between a Fusion GPS contractor and a Clinton campaign advisor. I need this to arrive before Sunday. Schiff says he'll cover the press portion. Bondi closed the folder. She was not furious. Not yet. She was calculating. Something more deadly than wrath grew beneath her eyes. Resolve. She took up the phone and dialed Kash. Tell Trump that I've gone through everything. Kash did not inquire about what she had discovered. He just asked, how bad? It's bad enough that I'll never be able to go into a federal facility without cameras in my face. Are you sure you want to keep going? She said, there's no halfway. He exhaled at the other end. Then I will prepare our squad. But just so you know, if you open this, they will come after your license and reputation. Perhaps worse. Bondi returned to the folder named Bat Channel. She responded, I'm not doing this for my name. I'm doing it so that this never occurs again. Kash stopped and uttered something she'd never heard from him before. Good, because you have just become the tail. Bondi did not flinch. She started preparing notes for a legal briefing. These were not blog postings. These were not opinion pieces. They were accusations, implications, and constitutional challenges all backed up with facts. She was writing history with a pen that might get her disbarred if she made one mistake. She gazed up at the television in the corner. On mute, a CNN presenter lauded Schiff's steadfast integrity. She gave a dry chuckle and switched the TV off. However, just telling the truth was insufficient. Someone has to take it through the flames. The executive order was released 3 days later. There is no press release. There is no rally. At 8:12 a.m., the White House website received a cold upload followed by a short tweet from the official account. From now on, federal elections must require evidence of citizenship. States that violate this policy will lose access to federal election funds. By midday, the planet was on fire. CNN broadcast a 5-hour piece describing the directive as an authoritarian overreach. On MSNBC, 3 former DOJ officials debated whether Bondi should be disbarred. Before even finishing reading the ruling, California's Attorney General declared a lawsuit. Bondi was alone in a war room in Washington, D.C. By far, surrounded by paperwork, legal pads, and a stack of subpoenas ready for filing. She did not respond to the headlines. She knew this would happen. What she hadn't anticipated was how quickly the machine turned. The media ceased referring to her as a former attorney general. Now she was a Trump supporter with a vengeance. Academic committees were already debating the deterioration of democratic values. Some people questioned if Bondi's access to secret information breached national security rules. Nobody acknowledged that the papers she quoted were lawfully declassified. None of them affected the material. Schiff held a news conference that afternoon. Before he got to the podium, cameras rolled. His expression was measured. His voice lowered just enough to seem melancholy. "This is not transparency," he said, "and it is a direct assault on our democratic institutions. President Trump is using declassified information to foment mistrust, promote conspiracy theories, and undermine our electoral processes from inside." He hesitated significantly. Pam Bondi, tragically, has chosen to play the role of facilitator. A reporter in the audience questioned Congressman, "Are you denying the authenticity of the memos she cited?" Schiff said, "I'm saying context matters. When you cherry-pick information, you might make it seem suspicious." Bondi did not reply with a news release. She did not hold a microphone. She called Natalie Winters. Natalie was not a politician. She wasn't even an attorney. She was a data-driven journalist who had been discreetly releasing investigations that conventional media sources refused to cover. She did not care about the applause. She cared about receipts. Bondi asked her if she was sure she wanted to participate in this. Natalie said, "I've been in it for years. This just makes it official." That night, while the media repeated talking points, Natalie posted a quiet discussion on X. There are no hashtags or filters, simply images of internal Fusion GPS messages, each with timestamps, names, and a digital paper trail. Within hours, it had been seen over 10 million times. But the response was just as quick. The next morning, an altered video clip circulated. It seemed that Natalie had called for violence. She had not, but the reduction was convincing. Within an hour, major networks began broadcasting it. Her face was everywhere. So were the threats. Text messages, emails, and comments on her old college articles. "Traitor. Fascist. We know where you live," so Bondi phoned her right away. "They're attempting to discredit you before you appear at the witness table." "I figured," Natalie answered quietly, "but it just implies they're terrified." "They are," Bondi said. "That implies you accomplished your job." Natalie hesitated. "What happens now?" "Now," BDD said, "you are more than simply a journalist, you are a witness. I'm taking you inside." The following morning, Bondi stepped into her office and directed her legal staff to prepare Natalie for committee testimony. They did not blink. By dusk, protesters had gathered outside the building. Chants, sons, and cameras. Inside, Bondi went over the files once again. Every page suddenly seemed radioactive, and each word was an accusation. But duty, not fear, drove her on. She didn't start it, but she wouldn't allow anybody else alter it. Natalie received a quick text message saying, "Get ready. They'll hurl everything at us, so just hold the line." Natalie said, "They've already tried. I'm still here." Their wrath, however, did not faze Bondi. It just reaffirmed one thing. She had struck the objective. The hearing was scheduled for another week, but it seemed like the storm had already arrived. Natalie Winters exited the train at Union Station wearing black trousers, a canvas coat, and a tattered leather satchel. There was no entourage or cosmetics crew, just 3 phones, a binder, and a growing file of censored quiet that had followed her since college. The automobile that took her up was not government-issued. It was Bondi's personal driver, with low profile and tinted windows. Natalie rode silently, peering out the window as the Capitol dome came into view. She was not intimidated. She was calculating. Kash Patel greeted Bondi as she entered her temporary office in Georgetown. He offered coffee, but she declined. "I didn't come for the food," she said, unzipping her bag. "I came to drop a hammer." Bondi met her in the corridor with a nod of understanding rather than a handshake. "You know they're going to come at you much harder once you're in that chair," Bondi warned. "I hope they do," Natalie said. "I like them loud. The louder they get, the more people listen." They spent the day preparing. Bondi reread her testimony as Natalie practiced responses to potential questioning. Schiff's methods were usually the same: confuse, disrupt, and twist. Natalie ignored Bondi's warning. "I've spent 6 years with facts," she said. He hid from them for 6 years. That night, Bondi switched on the television. A team of legal experts had previously called for Natalie's testimony to be suppressed. One broadcaster quoted an unidentified source who said Natalie was not reliable owing to ideological prejudice. Meanwhile, Bondi's email was filled with veiled threats. Lawyers from 3 states told her that she may be disbarred. One correspondence from a Harvard law professor said that she was flirting with illegality. Bondi didn't respond. She just printed them and placed them in a folder called Attempts to Silence. Natalie made an appearance on a national television program the next evening. It was meant to be a neutral conversation, but Bondi saw it as a broadcast ambush. 3 panelists and 1 moderator, all eager to characterize her as dangerous. The host grinned faintly. Natalie, let's start with the obvious. Why are Trump supporters opting to vent confidential issues on public television? Natalie did not flinch. She leaned forward, voice even. When the truth looks this ugly, I see why you'd call it hazardous. The panel members shuffled in their chairs. You're citing materials that were not intended for the public, one of them said. You mean the ones where Fusion GPS worked with a presidential campaign to send unverified accusations into intelligence channels? She shot back. Another panelist joined in. This is a classic deflection. You mean signing off on FISA warrants based on material the FBI had previously dismissed? She inquired. Even the host was startled. Yet the moment that burst through was delicate. One panelist attempted to infer that she was risking national security. She did not shout. She did not offend. She simply said that trust must be earned rather than given. If revealing a falsehood devastates your organization, maybe the lie was the issue. The room became silent, but the network did not let it last. The following morning, edited video snippets of the interview began circulating online. One clipped her mid-sentence to make it seem as if she was supporting unlawful monitoring. Another removed context, implying she was inciting political violence. She wasn't astonished. She was ready. Bondi phoned that afternoon. They are going full smear. Then we're exactly on schedule. Natalie responded. Are you scared? I am bored. Bondi laughs for the first time in a week. You are a madman. No, Natalie said. I am a flashlight and they are all cockroaches. Bondi looked out the window for a second, watching the rain flow down the glass. I want you to sit right next to me when we go in, she stated. Not behind, after, or alongside me. Natalie said. Then get ready, because I am not bringing a folder. I'm bringing receipts. Instead of giving up, Natalie phoned a blocked number and said yes. When Bondi and Winters entered the hearing room, the chairs were already packed. The journalists had assembled before daylight. C-SPAN's stream crashed twice before 9 a.m. Reporters muttered into their phones, as if waiting for a judgment rather than evidence. Inside, the arrangement seemed formal. Polished wood, flags behind each chair, rows of water bottles arranged like props. Bondi knew better. This was not a process. It was drama. Schiff created it to embarrass her. He didn't comprehend she didn't come to dispute, but to reveal. She took her seat without looking around. Natalie sat to her left, silently yet intently looking over her notes. Her mere presence had already created tension. The room felt as if it were holding its breath. The chairman, who has previously labeled Bondi a relic of partisan politics, tapped his gavel. The committee is called to order. Adam Schiff was the first to speak. His tone was controlled, his words refined to cut without revealing the sword. Let the record show that this hearing is not a forum for conspiracy theories. Ms. Bondi's selective disclosures and public remarks jeopardized national security and the credibility of our institution. His eyes narrowed as he slowly turned to face her. This is Congress, not a Florida courtroom drama. We will not be intimidated by MAGA attorneys turned media stunt doubles. There it was. Bondi didn't blink or move. Schiff said louder now. The so-called Crossfire papers were cherry-picked, taken out of context, and, at best, deceptive. Worst-case scenario, doctored. And the claim that the FBI colluded against a candidate? It's not just untrue. It's hazardous. Then he leaned back, as if waiting for applause. None arrived. The chairman nodded to Bondi. You may react. She leaned forward cautiously, her voice soft and controlled. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us start with the congressman's worry regarding context. She pressed a button, and a screen behind her lighted up. revealing an internal FBI document dated October 2016. Top line. The dossier remains unconfirmed. She glanced straight at Schiff. Allow the record to show that the fundamental document used to acquire surveillance on U.S. citizen Carter Page was never confirmed, according to your own agency. Click the next slide. An audio clip started playing, scratchy yet clear. A timestamp and an FBI supervisor's voice. Yes, the dossier is still rubbish, but it is being pushed via Schiff's office. Simply have the warrant authorized. Real gasps were heard when a staff member lost a pen. Someone in the back mumbled what sounded like a prayer. Schiff leaned forwards. Mr. Chairman, I object. The recording was taken out of context. Bondi clicked again, triggering a second voice. We have informed Schiff's team that this information has not been confirmed. We don't need it to be true, the voice said. We need it to be helpful. Silence, you could almost hear people thinking. Please tell me that was a hoax. Bondi gently turned to face Schiff. Her voice did not elevate. It did not need to. You are not cherry-picked, Congressman. You are being cited. The chairman attempted to interrupt, but no one moved. He motioned to play the whole audio. It rolled, unbroken, unmistakable. Staff from Schiff's office were discovered ignoring legal warnings and confessing to collaborating with other parties. Schiff was silent toward the conclusion of the conversation. His hands grabbed the table tightly, as if he was afraid he might collapse. Across the table, Christopher Steele cleared his throat. His accent revealed a hint of defensiveness. He described the material I had produced as raw intelligence. It was not intended to be taken as reality, but rather as a directing framework. Natalie turned her head gently. You mean fan fiction, supported by a political campaign, and channeled into governmental surveillance under the guise of legitimacy? He opened his lips and said nothing. Bondi rose up slightly and clicked on the following slide, which was a Fusion GPS email. Subject line, we need anything that can get him out before October. Body, Steele is working on it. Steele shrank into his chair. Schiff sat quietly, eyes forward as if the room no longer existed. Bondi's voice became sharper. You don't need to trust me. Simply listen to your own files, personnel, and voices. But just when it seemed that the harm had been done, Bondi stepped up and presented one more piece of evidence. Bondi halted, allowing the stillness to do its magic. The displays behind her now showed a single frame from a video, grainy and unsteady, shot with a phone, the kind of material seen in local news segments that people seldom notice until the context alters everything. She pressed play, and the scene changed to a Southern California community fair with a little voter registration station beneath a blue canopy, balloons swinging, and a handwritten sign that said no ID was required to register here. The camera focused on the volunteer at the booth, who seemed to be unconcerned, easygoing, and smiling. A speaker off camera inquired, "You don't need proof of citizenship?" The volunteer grinned. "Nope, we just ask whether you reside nearby." The video stopped, gulped, and whispered through the hearing room like wind beneath a closed door. Several aides shuffled in their chairs. One congressman murmured under his breath as Bondi approached the committee, serene and unshaken. That was hardly a marginal group. That was a taxpayer-funded outreach operation that used state funds to encourage unlawful voter registration. She did not wait for anybody to protest. She went directly to the next paper. An inside email exchange between a California election commissioner and a campaign advisor. Make sure the new arrivals are signed up before the end of the month. We need those numbers to carry Q4. A palm crashed onto the table across the aisle. Congressman Larry Menser, a renowned Schiff supporter, virtually shrieked, "That's completely out of context." Bondi leaned toward him, as if he were a physician rectifying a faulty diagnosis. "Do you want context? Okay, here's more." She held out another email, this time from a state director of strategy to their internal staff. It stated, "We can't count on Gen Z to be unpredictable. Get the immigration count ASAP." Now the air in the room felt changed. Nor noisy, nor chaotic, simply still. The American people did not lose trust in the system, she said. You change the system behind their backs, then blame them for noticing. At least 4 Democrats rose up and left. No explanation, just the sound of expensive shoes scratching across marble as seats pulled back and doors opened. Bondi kept going. You open the borders first, followed by the ballot box. And now you're calling everybody who doubts it a fascist. She didn't yell. She did not need to. Silence performed the hard lifting. This is not about voter access. It's all about vote laundering. This is not sympathy. It's about cooperation. She let go of the last slide. A letter labeled ballot strategy and urban inflow. Yellow highlights indicate key demographic assets. You could hear phones humming in people's pockets. Journalists typing under the table. Someone in the gallery said, "Oh my God." Bondi returned to the table and sat down. Then Natalie stood. She was not meant to talk again. But the room did not deter her. "I spent years hearing that what I did was risky," she said. "That telling people the truth will destabilize institutions. But if the only thing keeping those institutions together is a falsehood, maybe they deserve to fail." She turned to face Schiff, who suddenly seemed pale and drawn. He did not react. He did not even glance up. The chairman leaned forward and cleared his throat. He read from a sheet slowly, as if the words weighted more than they should. Congressman Adam Schiff has been submitted to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation based on the testimony and evidence given before this committee. Specifically, misleading statements to federal investigators and the misuse of legislative power. There were no gasps this time, just the sound of legal exposure seeping into the walls like smoke. The chairman proceeded. Christopher Steele was found to have deliberately misrepresented unconfirmed allegations as actionable information, and is now labeled persona non grata. A federal request for expulsion has been filed. Steele sits still, eyes unfocused. Then the third blow. Hillary Clinton has been ordered to cooperate with a federal investigation into campaign-related fraud, based on payment records, internal emails, and coordination discovered throughout this probe. Fusion GPS accounts will be frozen awaiting review. Someone in the gallery had dropped their phone. The thump resonated across the room. And it wasn't just people. The chairman was not done. Furthermore, federal funds will be withdrawn from any state found to have violated constitutional election rules. This includes, but is not limited to, California, New Jersey, and Illinois. Outside, a throng watching the hearing on large screens started to applaud. Not crazily, not like a rally, but it's as if people are finally hearing something after years of waiting. As if one's breath had finally been unleashed. Inside, Bondi said nothing. Neither did Natalie. They did not need to. But that wasn't a victory speech. This was an autopsy. And a caution. That night, the streets outside the Capitol were rather calm. They were not noisy. They were focused.